Thanks, Kate. Thrilled to be here again. Burnout, what a wonderfully fun topic to talk about, right? So just show of hands, how many of you out there are currently caregivers? Okay, wow, excellent. I'm so pleased you're here, because being here is actually, that's kind of my lecture, so I can go off the stage now, so okay. How many of you are currently being served by a caregiver? Wow, excellent. And how many of you wish you had a caregiver that was, yeah, there you go, okay. Now, one of the interesting things was that some of the caregivers put their hands up, okay, which is relevant. So you guys are already a step ahead of me. So I'm going to spend a few minutes. I got 15, 20 minutes here, and I want to just spend some things, and a lot of this will be evident to you, but a lot of what I'm going to be doing for you caregivers out there is not so much giving you direction, but giving you permission, okay? And that'll become more evident here. So this cartoon, you can see on the bottom, Morris studies the lower right-hand corner of the big picture, okay? Now, so often when we're talking about this issue, we're dealing with a very serious disease. We're dealing potentially with very sick people that have a high level of need. I made a comment in one of the sessions yesterday that I think that the fact that I'm relatively well-functioning, and just in terms of my background, yeah, I do have I am a physician. I do some medical work, did so more so than I am now. Diagnosed with IPF, had a transplant 7 months ago. I was actually got on the list 1 year ago today was my listing date, and 153 days later than I got the transplant. So not that we count those things, right? But so there's so much complexity, and sometimes we can get focused in on the little details and miss the big picture. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping a big picture view of what we're doing here. When we talk about the need for caregiving support, there are several domains that need to be respected. There's the practical aspects of just living life one day at a time for the caregivers. There is the physical impact of this disease, and sometimes it has to do with the physical demands of caring for someone who is invalid. Other times it's the aspects of sleeplessness and other aspects of obscure and disjointed diets. All these things kind of come into play. There's the emotional impact, the spiritual impact, and of course the social impact, where we now as caregivers feel somewhat isolated from those that we might have wished we could or in the past had connected with. And then there's the financial impact of having someone who may have been a breadwinner, who may have contributed meaningful income to the family, now is not, and in fact now there's a big financial burden. So all of these domains need to be respected and understood and addressed within the context of caregiving support. We're not going to do that today, because we could do an entire conference talking about those types of things. But we just want to get to some just some summary points. First of all, and this may be one of the big ones, believe in yourself. We want our caregivers to make active choices that are in their own best interest. Self-identifying as a family caregiver, it's okay to claim that title and to claim that role. Recognizing your strengths and now acknowledging your limitations. And I think that both of those things are sometimes in short supply. I see, this comes up on a later slide too, but I see a lot of times caregivers becoming frustrated over what they're not able to accomplish. When in fact, they're accomplishing great and momentous things, and they sort of diminish those and focus on the things that they didn't get done, or that they didn't do as well as they could. And in some cases are doing things that they never were trained to do. I remember my wife coming at me the first time with a syringe. She was sort of gleeful about it, I was a little wary about that, but she never had any training in handling these sorts of things, or learning names and dosing of medications and taking blood pressures and all the things that she had to do over time. Learning to say no. And sometimes you have to learn to say no to the person you're providing care to. And one of the things that doesn't show up on the slide, but I think is really, really important, and this is as much for those that are being cared for, the fact that you have a terminal illness, the fact that you have limitations, does not give you permission to behave badly, okay? Now, I will also say that on the caregiving side, we sometimes have to recognize that when you're saddled with the terminal disease, and certainly on the medications, that may cause us to act and behave in ways that are not accustomed to us and over which we have no control. I, on more than one occasion, have told my wife, no, sweetheart, that's the steroids talking. That wasn't me, you know. Most of the time it wasn't, but some, you know. So we have to understand that there are limitations, saying no, and understanding the boundaries and the parameters, what you can and can't do. There's the issue of commanding respect from healthcare providers, and I think that's important, and I think that the next session they'll talk more about, you know, dealing with docs. I just want to say just a couple quick things. I ran across this once. I know you understand what you think I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant, okay? Sometimes we come out of those interactions with the healthcare providers feeling a bit confused. When you're at the doctor's office, you need to be honest, open, and upfront. There's no value in underestimating the concerns or symptoms, and there's no purpose in exaggerating. The doctors need to know exactly what's going on if they're going to help you help your loved one. And here's another thing, don't be apologetic in your role as a caregiver. Geez, I'm sorry, I wished I could, I wished I would have, I wished I should have. No, don't be apologetic. You claim what you're able to do and be proud of those accomplishments. And if in the doctor's office, they're not going to be offended if the treatments aren't working. As a physician, I would have people coming in, I'm sorry, doctor, that medicine just didn't work. Well, I'm not offended by that. I'm sorry it didn't, but we'll work harder to make the next thing work better. So don't be apologetic. Don't be embarrassed. If something is weird or odd or you know, seems a little bit off kilter, I can pretty much assure you there's nothing that you can tell or ask the doctor that she or he hasn't seen or heard before. So make sure that those environments are productive and meaningful and upfront, honest, and open and transparent. You need to protect your health. This is an important one for all caregivers. A good night's sleep. You need a respite holiday. Give yourself permission to take a break away. And you know, time and energy to exercise. You have no problem scheduling the doctor's appointment, the physical therapy, the pulmonary rehab, the other things that are part. Schedule that time in, maybe 20 minutes for a brisk walk around the block or to go to the gym for a half an hour. But that is so important. You know, this gets into part of the thing, I think it's even biblical, love thy neighbor as thyself, thyself, thyself. You need to take care of yourself so you can be well, so that you can be in a position to take care of your loved one. Regular checkups with your doctor to ensure that if something is wrong, you catch it early. And I didn't bring the statistics about the percent of illness, depression, and other issues that crop up in the caregivers. And so you need to be respecting that and take care of yourself. You need to have a life apart from the caregiving. I know that as a caregiver, it occupies 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of your time, attention, energy, and resources. You need to make sure that you're giving yourself a chance to step away from that and maintain or create a hobby, a distraction, a book club, whatever it takes. Just in our family, you know, my wife had a dual role because in addition to caring for me pre and post-transplant, her father was now very, very ill, and she was his primary caregiver and at his place, you know, 7 days a week also. So I was able to observe that and it worked with her to make sure that she was creating time for herself and getting away. And again, for people that are really dedicated to that role, it's kind of hard to pull them aside. You're saying, well, what's going to happen? Nobody can take care of him or her as well as I can. Okay, that may be true, but that's a recipe for burnout. I like this one. Thelma was a whoops, there it is. So. Enough said. You know. She said, "I'm tired of this. I just got to get out of the house. I got it." Yeah, absolutely. So Thelma gave me permission to use her name and this slide. So reach out for help. There's a lot of folks for whom pride keeps them from doing this. You need to recognize that family caregiving is more than a one-person job. Think of the number of hours in a week, and if you're doing that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it is a recipe for burnout. Care coordination services can help navigate the confusing pathways of health, social support systems, and ensure continuity of your loved one's care. Virtually all insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid, and all the other carriers provide for case managers. It would be worthwhile if you don't have a case manager, it doesn't cost you anything, to have a case manager assigned to your circumstance. And then talk with that case manager about resources that are available. They have a vested interest in you being healthy so that you can continue to provide in-home care so that we don't have to worry about ER visits, hospital stays, and facility stays. So talk to a care manager about that so that you can make sure you're accessing everything that your insurance company will provide your resources for. Explore financial resources that would assist in purchasing additional help. I've got 2-3 websites on the last page, and you can pull those and access some of those. Seek community-based supports designed to help caregiving families. Every community has those, and those might be in the form of faith communities. A lot of people are part of faith communities, many are not. I encourage people to get engaged with those, whether or not they have a belief structure that is supported by that particular congregation. And it's always encouraging me when I've got, and sometimes I'll pair them up. I'll have someone who's not part of a faith community. I talk to them about the value of having a supportive network of people who care about them and love them and want to help them. And I'll call a congregation in their neighborhood and saying, would you be willing to come alongside this family? And I've never had one say no. So they just need the help of a loving community. Would you be willing to help? And so I would never diminish the potential impact of accessing those types of resources. Again, reaching out for help. Caregiving is a job, and respite is your earned right. Reward yourself with respite breaks often. That's really important. Watch for signs of depression. Don't delay in getting professional help when you need it. When people suggest to help, anything I can do, we have a tendency to say, thanks, I'll give you a call, and then we just sort of dismiss that. Take advantage of that. Call them. Accept the offer. You know the things that you do that can be done by others, and getting that break will be really, really important. Educate yourself about your loved one's condition. Of course, that's why you're all here this weekend for the PFF conference, so that you can learn more about the condition and how to communicate effectively with the doctors. There is a difference between caring and doing. Be open to technologies and ideas that promote your loved one's independence. That's a huge part as well. The more that we can help our, I still refer to them as patients, but our loved ones with this disease be able to function on their own, they feel better about it, and it's less of a burden on you. Trust your instincts. Most of the time, they'll lead you in the right direction. Again, on the physical side, caregivers do a lot of lifting, pushing, and pulling. Be good to your back, okay? I felt really, as a patient, I felt guilty because, I'm not able to lift boxes. I can't lift a suitcase. I can't, and, here's my wife doing everything. And in the midst of all of this, her dad, who she was caring for, died. And so now we have to, she's responsible for clearing out the house and all that entails. And I couldn't do hardly any of that. And I felt guilty, I felt bad. And so we took advantage of those people that said, we're willing to help. And we gave them jobs to do. So, you thought you'd have, if you had 8 kids, someone would step up to the plate, but they actually have to kind of live there to make that work. Stand up for your rights as a caregiver and a citizen. So recognize that caregiving, like any job, is made up of a lot of individual tasks. And when you think about that, break them down, then you're in a better position to be able to know how you can get help for those specific tasks. And then recognizing that asking for help is actually a sign of strength. You create the list of the tasks that need to be done in a given week, you figure out how you're going to get those done, and how you're going to get people to help with that. You can group them into categories if you want. Write down your worries, your concerns. I'm a big, big advocate of journaling. That really helps in terms of organizing your thoughts, giving you a place to vent. When you're out having a cup of coffee with a friend or a glass of wine, you can kind of regroup and kind of think about what those mean. Keeping a journal helps with your interactions with the physician as well. Share the list with someone you trust so they can help you give some objectivity to that. That's really important. Here's some big ones. We want to avoid guilt. Guilt comes in many forms. Guilt at not being able to do what you think that you should have been able to do. Guilt over the things that you were never trained to do that you're now forced into a position to do. Guilt over the fact that you still have the capacity to feel well and enjoy life while your loved one may not be able to do so. And that's a big one. He deserved to be able to enjoy, and he can't anymore. And therefore, because he can't, I don't deserve to either. That's not true. And if you talk to your loved one about it, they would not want you to feeling that way either. So we also need to avoid martyrdom. Again, the fact that we slip into these things that I'm the only one that can do this, and I need to be the one that's available, and I can't really ask for help, and I need to be the one available 24/7, okay? Again, if we're looking at recipes for burnout, that's at the top of the list, and we need to avoid that. I think one of the most important things is to understand that you are not alone. Okay? You're not alone in this. And there are other people to help. There are other resources that are available to help through this process. Love this quote from Abraham Lincoln: "The best thing about the future is that it comes only one day at a time." Okay? And yes, we make plans for the future, and we do planning, but at the end of the day, we need to get through today. Other considerations: plan ahead. You know, one of the concerns and stresses are, you know, we know that this disease is going south. That's the only place it can go, right? We don't know the timing necessarily, but we know that that's what's going to happen. Prepare advance directives, and I'm hoping that some of the other speakers will address that in a little bit more detail. Assign a power of attorney, and that's going to relieve a burden from the caregiver so that you will feel comfortable that at least when we get closer to the end that we've got both documents and a plan in place to address those issues. There are resources in every community to help with advance directives, and you should seek those out. Your doctor can help them. You have the kind of the what if, or better yet, the when conversations with your family and loved ones. This is what the disease is, this is what it's doing, this is where it's going, and these are some of the plans that we'd like to put in place and to really engage good conversation in that. When you go to the physician's office, always bring home a summary so that you can really have that available to you as you move forward. Last quote here is, "In the face of uncertainty, there's nothing wrong with hope." Okay? We understand that with this disease that we don't have hope for a cure in this moment. That's our long-term hope that we can do that. But in this moment, and for those of us that have this disease now, we don't have that hope that something's going to happen. So when people talk to me about, they don't want to introduce concepts of discussing prognosis or discussing palliative care or talking about end-of-life issues or do advanced directives because we don't want to take their hope away, my standard response is, what hope is it that you're talking about? Okay? Because there's all sorts of ways that we can hope to find meaning and purpose in this life now. Okay? You don't have to jot down the threads of the email addresses or the websites because you can Google any of these. Obviously, the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. Every community has access within their region, maybe not in their town, to an area agency on aging who has a lot of resources available to them to help with caregiving support. There's the National Family Caregiving Association, the Caregiver Action Network, and the National Alliance for Caregiving. These are all wonderful organizations that can help to support you, provide resources, provide networks of other caregivers with whom you can connect to share your frustrations, your joys, ideas and tips and things of that sort. So I would encourage you to do that.